Great Yarmouth in the county of Norfolk is a popular tourist destination, known for its beaches, historic buildings and seaside attractions.
But beneath the cheerful glow lies a more sinister story.
A story whispered through generations and buried through centuries of stone.
You see, during the 13th and 14th centuries, the people of Yarmouth lived in fear. Not of ghosts or monsters, but something very real, the threat of pirates or foreign invaders. In order to protect themselves, they built massive town wall fortifications, strong, high, and seemingly impenetrable.
Many of these stone walls still stand today, a crumbling reminder of a turbulent past. But what many don't know is that while these walls may have kept invaders out, they didn't protect the townsfolk from the evil that lurked within. Several ghosts are alleged to haunt the ancient graveyard and church.
The first ghost we'll introduce you to is called the Grey Lady. She is believed to be the spirit of a nun wronged in life. The silent figure is seen gliding through the churchyard or between the pews inside the church.
This graveyard was also the site of a famous ghost story.
In July 1872, rumours started to circulate that there was a strange apparition moving between the graves in the churchyard.
Several witnesses claimed to have seen this apparition with their own eyes.
One man stated that it changed into 4 different shapes while he watched it. Others recognised it as the ghost of a deceased man who used to live by the church. Others described the phenomenon as being a monster. One report stated that the ghost was an escaped lunatic. In 1922, 3 ghosts in armour were seen riding upon white horses in St Nicholas churchyard. It was said that 8 people died of shock after seeing the apparition.
Night after night, hundreds of people came to catch a glimpse of the ghost through the railings, but no apparition appeared. A wager was offered to anyone who would sleep in the churchyard overnight and keep a watch out for the nights, but it was never taken up, and the townspeople eventually lost interest.
In the early 1900s, the school next to the church received an unlikely gift. This was found in an elaborate tomb in Egypt. It was the mummified remains of an ancient Egyptian princess.
The embalmed corpse within its casket was donated by a teacher to the former priory school.
Not long afterwards, a foul stench permeated through the school. The building was searched from top to bottom for the cause. The origin of the smell was eventually found to be emanating from the casket. They then realised that the mummy was decomposing.
It was decided to bury the mummified princess in the churchyard of the neighbouring St Nicholas.
According to ancient customs, the burial should only be done at midnight. The casket was taken out through the back door of the school. Its acrid, rotting contents were buried in the dark of the night.
The casket was resealed and returned to the school. But that's not the end of our story.
Soon after, the neighbouring vicarage and St Nicholas Church were disturbed by strange knocking at the doors. Upon answering the knocks and opening the doors, it was found that nobody was there.
The acrid smell also reappeared in the school. And this time there was no doubt it was the casket.
Once again, the casket was opened, and it was discovered that in the haste to bury the mummy in the dark, an arm had been left behind.
The remains of the Egyptian princess were unearthed, and the limb was placed carefully beside it, and the knocking noises at the church stopped.
Now let's focus on the cemeteries of St. Nicholas. It is in these graveyards that the most abhorrent happenings occurred.
Mr. George Beck had laid his beloved wife Elizabeth to rest just after Halloween 1827. But when he came to pay his respects a few days later, he found that the grave had been disturbed. He called the police and they decided to exhume the coffin. They levered off the lid and peered inside. The coffin was empty, and all that was left of the dear lady was her shroud.
Other graves of the recently interred were raised, and these were also found empty. At least 20 bodies had been removed from their resting place in the graveyard, 2 of them children.
The bereaved families were inconsolable, and the townsfolk horrified and furious. The Norfolk Chronicle reported at the time, wives were seen searching for the remains of their deceased husbands, husbands for those of their wives, and parents for their children. Apparently the graveyard resembled a ploughed field.
This was the work of body snatchers, also known as resurrectionists. In the 18th and 19th century, corpses were illicitly exhumed. They were then sold to medical schools to be studied and experimented upon. There was a high demand for cadavers for dissection. At this time, the only legal but insufficient source of cadavers for experimentation was from criminals who were executed for their crimes.
The culprits were William and Robert Baker from Beccles. They had been coerced by Thomas Vaughan to steal bodies for medical research.
Vaughan rented a house at Row 6 near Whitehorse Lane, later known as Body Snatchers' Row. They used sawdust to conceal the bodies. These were then shipped to London via Norwich in wagons. He packed them in crates and canvas bags. The cadavers were placed in a room beside St. Bartholomew's Hospital for the surgeons to choose.
Shockingly, it was the vicar's own son, Sir Astley Cooper, who had been the surgeon who commissioned the body snatchers to dig up the cadavers that autumn. He was also the surgeon for Queen Victoria. The mastermind behind the scheme, Thomas Vaughan, was apprehended. He was sentenced to only 6 months in prison, as the court deemed body snatching only a misdemeanor. Furthermore, the surgeons paid to ensure that he was treated well while inside.
He continued body snatching after being released. In 1831, he was caught stealing the clothes from corpses. He was caught and transported to Van Diemen's Land, which is now Tasmania in Australia.
In 1827, high fences were put up around St. Nicholas graveyard to prevent a repetition of the crime. So, be careful if you're walking at night around the churchyard of St. Nicholas. Let us know. Have you ever seen an apparition there?
Don't give us nightmares. Please like and subscribe.